You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I got off work early that Friday, nerves buzzing through my chest like static. I had this whole plan in place, months in the making, really. Our 7th wedding anniversary. I was proud of myself for once. Normally Morgan was the one who remembered dates, who sent thoughtful texts and bought the kind of gifts that made people feel seen. But this time I was ahead of the game. I had reserved a secluded cabin in Asheville, 2 nights with a view of the mountains, no cell signal, a fireplace, and a clawfoot tub she always said she wanted to soak in. I even printed the reservation details on nice linen paper, folded it into a card, and tucked it into an envelope with a dumb little pun on the front, something about climbing new heights together. It was cheesy, sure, but it was us. Or it used to be. I stopped at the florist on the way home and picked up a fresh bouquet of white tulips. Her favorite. I imagined the look on her face. She'd be surprised. Maybe even a little emotional. I kept replaying the moment in my head during the drive, the hug, the kiss, the grateful look in her eyes. We'd both been busy lately, too busy, and I thought maybe this trip would be the reset we needed. When I pulled into our driveway, the sun was still high. It felt like spring had finally decided to show up. I remember the way the breeze moved through the trees in the front yard, how the neighborhood kids were biking in the cul-de-sac like they had no idea that someone's life was about to split down the middle. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet. Our living room was spotless. Not the kind of clean you do when you're tidying up after yourself. No, this was the kind of clean you do when you're preparing to leave. It was like I'd walked into a photograph of our life rather than the real thing. And then I saw it. A suitcase. Hers. Neatly zipped, standing upright by the couch. I stood there for a second, processing it. The suitcase wasn't like her usual travel bag either. It was the hardshell, expensive one she used sparingly. The one she took when she wanted to look put together. I moved slowly into the room, the flowers still in my hand. There were 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. Both half full, both still giving off that faint warmth that tells you someone had just been drinking from them. That's when I heard her footsteps from down the hall. She came into view from the hallway wearing a dress I didn't recognize. Not S**XY exactly. But different. Elegant. Deep maroon, snug around the waist, high neckline, long sleeves. Not something she'd wear around the house. Not even for a video call. She looked surprised to see me, like she hadn't expected me for another hour, like I'd caught her in the middle of something. "Oh," she said, blinking. "You're home early." She didn't sound excited. Just thrown off. I gave a smile that I hoped didn't look as stiff as it felt. "Wanted to surprise you. Happy anniversary." I held up the tulips and the envelope. Her eyes flicked between the flowers, the envelope, and too quickly, the suitcase. "Oh, Jake," she said, already moving toward the coat rack. "God, I completely forgot to tell you. I have to go to Orlando tonight." She grabbed her coat and tossed it over her arm. "It's a work thing. Last minute. They're short 1 person for the marketing panel at the tech conference. I'm filling in." I stood there, still holding the flowers, my grip tightening a little as she moved around me with surgical efficiency. Wait, I said, trying to catch up. "You're leaving now?" "Yeah," she said, glancing at her watch. "My flight's in 2 hours. I need to grab an Uber or I'm gonna miss it." She wasn't even making eye contact. Her voice had that rehearsed rhythm to it, like this was a script she'd practiced already. I looked down at the envelope in my hand, then back at the suitcase. "Since when?" I asked. "Since this morning, basically." I didn't want to go, believe me, but Gary made it sound like the whole thing would fall apart without someone from our team there. And I guess I'm the only one who knows both the product and the brand voice. I blinked. "Orlando." "Yeah. You told me your team's conference was next month. And it was in Chicago." She froze for half a second. "Just enough." "That's the big one," she said, recovering fast. "This is just a small thing. Internal partners mostly. It came up out of nowhere." I looked past her, toward the hallway, like maybe the answers were there. "Who were you drinking with?" That did it. Her face stiffened. The soft edge disappeared. "I had a glass while I packed," she said. "Just easing the stress." I motioned to the table with a tilt of my head. "There are 2 glasses." She hesitated again, then gave a thin smile. "One's from earlier this week. I forgot to rinse it." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. She stepped closer, kissed me quickly on the cheek. "Like you would your brother or your boss. I'll text you when I land. Okay? We'll do something when I'm back. Promise." And just like that, she was out the door. I stood there for a long time, not moving, not thinking. The envelope in my hand started to wrinkle under the pressure of my fingers. The tulips drooped a little, bending in my grip like even they didn't know what to do anymore. I looked around the room, like maybe some hidden camera would swing down and tell me this was a prank. That any second now she'd come bursting back in, laughing, telling me it was all a joke. But there was only silence. The clock ticked on the wall. The air still held her perfume. And I just stood there, husband, planner, fool, holding a vacation I was never going to take. I set the flowers on the kitchen counter and sat down on the edge of the couch. The wine glasses were still there, the red wine staining the inside of the glass in slow, tired streaks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Morgan. Boarding now. Sorry again. Love you. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I flipped it face down. And I just sat there, surrounded by all the things I thought I understood, wondering when it had all started falling apart. That night, I didn't move for hours. I sat in that same spot on the couch, the same cushion we used to share during movie nights, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The house was still. Too still. I could hear the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards like the place itself was whispering things I didn't want to hear. My hand was still resting on the folded reservation envelope. I hadn't opened it again. What was the point? She was gone. She left on our anniversary. With no warning, no discussion, no glance back. I couldn't shake the image of her suitcase sitting there so neatly, like it had been packed for hours. Maybe even since the morning. Maybe even the night before. That thought made my stomach twist. I tried to distract myself, opened a bottle of wine I'd bought for the trip, poured myself a glass, then stared at it like it might give me answers. I didn't even drink it. I just sat there, alone in the living room, tracing memories that suddenly didn't feel as warm as they once did. By midnight, I couldn't pretend anymore. My mind started reaching backward, clawing through the past few months, flipping over moments I had brushed aside before, things I should have questioned, but didn't, because I trusted her. God, I trusted her. It started with her work hours. She used to come home around 6, like clockwork. But sometime last fall, that changed. First, it was just staying late to help the new hires catch up, or prepping for a client meeting the next day. That turned into full evenings at the office. We're ordering dinner in, she'd say. It's just easier to stay. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? Then the business trips. More frequent. Less notice. Always vague. Chicago. Dallas. A few times she mentioned Orlando. Said it was for a new marketing partnership. I never pushed for details. I didn't want to be the clingy husband. I thought she was rising in her career, and honestly, I was proud of her. She started dressing differently too. Nicer. Not just for work, but in general. Buying new blouses, new shoes. She used to throw on yoga pants and a hoodie when she worked from home. But lately, even her casual looked curated. Like she was dressing for someone, but not for me. Her phone habits changed too. Subtly at first. She stopped leaving it face up. Started flipping it over when she set it on the table. No big deal. But then she took it everywhere with her, even to the bathroom. Started using her laptop in private more often. I'd walk into the room, and she'd close tabs without a word. Work stuff, she'd say. Just contracts and internal chatter you wouldn't care about. There were fewer texts to me. Fewer check-ins. She used to send me dumb memes in the middle of the day. Tell me she missed me. That stopped around Christmas. I figured she was just stressed, overworked. I told myself it was normal. One night, maybe 6 weeks ago, I asked her what she wanted for dinner. She was scrolling through her phone, lying in bed. She didn't even look up. Whatever, she muttered. I'm not hungry. I remember just standing there in the doorway, holding a takeout menu. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like a guest in my own marriage. I told myself it was a phase. A rough patch. Every couple goes through those, right? Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. That wasn't unusual anymore. Morgan said she liked to journal in the mornings, get her head clear before work. She'd always done it at the kitchen table. I dragged myself out of bed, still in last night's clothes, and found the house empty. Quiet. Like the night before had never happened. She was already gone. There was no note. No text. Her toothbrush was still in the holder, but her hairbrush was gone. So was her charger. And yeah, now that I was thinking about it, her perfume bottle. The nice one. The one she only used when she was client-facing. She hadn't forgotten anything. I finally opened my laptop and looked up the conference she claimed to be attending. I started with the biggest Orlando tech events. A few came up, but none that listed her company or her on the speaker roster. I checked the hotel she usually stayed at during work trips. No mention of it on her calendar. Nothing in her emails, at least the ones I had access to. I didn't want to be that guy. The snooper. The paranoid husband. But she'd lied to me. She left on our anniversary. I was past giving her the benefit of the doubt. Later that afternoon, I sat on our front porch with a notebook in my lap and started listing every odd thing I could remember from the past year. Little things. Things I had ignored. Changed her passcode 3 months ago. Said it was company policy. Stopped syncing her calendar with our shared one. Her coworker Alex texted her after 11 p.m. once. She said it was about a pitch deck. Said she was too tired to be an asterisk mate. For weeks. Took a trip to visit her sister, but her sister posted photos from an entirely different city that same weekend. I kept writing until the list looked like a wall of warning signs. They were all there. One after another. I just didn't connect them in time. That night, I looked through old photos. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping to remind myself of the good times. Of who we used to be. There was one from 2 years ago, us at Lake Lure, sitting on the dock with our feet in the water. She was laughing, leaning into me, and I looked so damn happy. That guy didn't know what was coming. That guy had no idea how distant a person could become while still sleeping beside you. I wanted to call her. Ask her where she really was. Who she was with. But I didn't. Instead, I opened her side of the closet. It was less full than it used to be. A few pairs of heels missing. Some dresses. Even a few of her coats. My heart sank lower with every empty hanger I found. Then I noticed something that made my blood go cold. Her keepsake box was gone. Morgan had this old tin box, something she kept her childhood photos in, old birthday cards, random mementos like wristbands from concerts we went to together. That thing had followed her through every apartment she ever lived in. She used to say it held her whole life in a box. It was gone. You don't take that on a business trip. You don't take that unless you're planning something bigger. Unless you're planning not to come back. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the wine glasses she left behind. One was hers. The other? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But part of me was already imagining it, the scenario, the guy, the conversations they'd had while I was still out shopping for tulips and printing reservation details. When the sun came up, I was still sitting there. Same shirt. Same thoughts. A storm churning in my chest with nowhere to go. I opened my laptop and typed her name into a reverse image search. I didn't even know what I was looking for, maybe a tagged photo, a post from someone who didn't realize I existed. Anything. Any digital breadcrumb that would make the silence make sense. I came up empty. But the not knowing? That was almost worse than the truth. Almost. Because part of me already knew. The truth wasn't hiding. It was staring me straight in the face. And it had been for months. 3 days later, I found the truth in the most mundane way possible. That's the part that still haunts me, not the explosion, not some dramatic reveal, but how quietly it arrived. I was just trying to download a PDF from my work email. That's it. Nothing big. Just a file I needed for a Monday meeting. Our family computer, the one in the guest room, hadn't been touched in months. It used to be our shared space before Morgan got a work-issued laptop and started locking her personal one with passwords I was suddenly too nosy to ask about. I booted up the old desktop, stretching out in the creaky rolling chair she always hated. I typed in my email, went to download the file, and paused when the desktop flashed with a prompt from the cloud sync. Morgan's iCloud photos synced 6 minutes ago. I hadn't realized the computer was still logged into her cloud account. The last time I'd backed up her phone here was maybe a year ago. Maybe more. But for some reason, maybe fate, maybe just laziness, she never logged out. I stared at the notification. Hovered over it. Closed the browser window and opened the Photos folder instead. Not proud of it. Not ashamed either. Not anymore. The folder loaded slowly like it knew it was about to destroy me. There were hundreds of images, old stuff mixed in with new. I recognized most of them. Beach trips, holidays, blurry selfies from restaurants we used to go to before we both got too busy. But then the timestamps shifted. The newer ones started popping in. And that's when I saw him. Tall, dark-haired. Same guy she introduced to me a year ago at her company's Christmas party. Said he was a senior brand strategist named Drew. Back then I shook his hand, offered him a beer, made small talk about baseball. Never thought twice. Now here he was again. In dozens of photos with my wife. In a villa somewhere warm, sunlight casting long, golden shadows across stone balconies and white curtains. She was in a white bikini I'd never seen before, lounging beside him by a private pool, her feet tangled with his beneath a towel. Breakfast in bed. Her hair messy, no makeup, that familiar sleepy smile I used to wake up to every Sunday morning. But now it was meant for someone else. He was holding the camera. She was holding his hand. I flipped through photo after photo, unable to stop. It was like watching a train crash in slow motion, knowing I was the one tied to the tracks. One image stood out. Burned into me. She was leaning against a stone wall in a black sundress, sunglasses perched on her head. He was kissing her shoulder. The background, blue ocean, white cliffside, looked like something from a travel magazine. The date in the corner? The same weekend she told me she was at a business seminar in Chicago. I backed out of the photo viewer and just sat there, staring at the screen, my hands frozen over the mouse. I remember hearing a neighbor's dog barking outside and thinking how normal the world still sounded. How indifferent everything was to what had just cracked open inside me. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just felt numb. Like my body had shut off the emotional breaker switch to keep me from combusting on the spot. The thing about seeing something like that, something undeniable, is that it doesn't just hurt. It rewrites your past in real time. I started seeing everything differently. Every memory, every fight, every skipped dinner or business trip or awkward silence, it all rearranged itself in my head. And suddenly it all made sense. The late nights. The suitcase. The 2 wine glasses. The rehearsed explanations. The sudden Orlando conference. The missing keepsake box. Everything I'd been trying to rationalize suddenly had context. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't insecure. I was right. I was being lied to. Repeatedly. Boldly. Systematically. The worst part? She didn't even bother to cover her tracks. Either she thought I wouldn't look or she didn't care if I did. I stayed in that chair for I don't know how long. Eventually, my fingers moved again. I copied everything. Every photo, every timestamp, every scrap of metadata, and saved it to a new folder labeled Morgan Villa. I don't know why I called it that. Maybe because it was easier than calling it what it really was. Proof. I stared at the last photo in the batch. They were in bed, blankets low, half covered. A bottle of wine on the nightstand, 2 glasses beside it. She looked so at ease. So content. A version of her I hadn't seen in months. Maybe longer. And the man, Drew, he wasn't some fling. He wasn't just a coworker or a mistake. You don't smile at a fling like that. You don't bring them to villas or take slow breakfast selfies in bed. This wasn't new. This wasn't just happening. This had been happening. I clicked back into the folders and checked the previous trips. There was a weekend in Dallas back in February. Another in October. Each one with the same man. Different outfits. Same smiles. Same pattern. The whole timeline began unfolding in front of me, more real and solid than anything Morgan had told me in a year. This wasn't an affair. This was a relationship. And I was the one being left behind while it bloomed in the shadows. At some point, I shut off the computer. Not because I'd seen enough, but because I couldn't physically look at another image. My eyes were burning, my throat dry, my chest like someone had hollowed it out with a spoon. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and just stood there, staring at the sink. The silence in the house was unbearable now. It used to be comforting. Peaceful. Now it felt like it was mocking me, every quiet moment a reminder that I'd been alone in this marriage for a long time and hadn't even known it. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Morgan. Landed safely. Exhausted. Hotel is nice. Miss you. I stared at the screen. My hands shook as I held the phone, rereading the lie again and again. Miss you. The audacity of that. The sheer gall it took to type that while the evidence sat just a click away. I put the phone down slowly, face up this time, and walked into the living room. I looked at the couch, the flowers I hadn't thrown out yet, and finally let the grief in. I didn't scream or punch a wall or smash anything dramatic like in movies. I just sank to the floor and cried. Quiet, aching sobs. The kind that feel like they're digging through your bones. The kind that make your whole body shake even though you're barely making a sound. I cried for the man I'd been, the one who planned anniversaries, who believed in phases and stress and she's just busy. I cried for the version of us I thought was still intact. But most of all, I cried for the simple truth. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. After I found the photos, something in me shifted. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was this colder, heavier feeling. A kind of resignation. Like part of me had accepted that I'd been living in a story someone else had been quietly rewriting behind my back. But even that acceptance didn't prepare me for what came next. It started with a thought I'd buried months ago. Maybe longer. A thought I had forced down every time it bubbled up because I didn't want to be the kind of man who questioned his own child. Our son, Liam, was 3. Smart, energetic, a ball of questions and curiosity. He had Morgan's eyes, there was no denying that. Same shade of gray-blue, like morning fog. But beyond that, I couldn't see myself in him. Not in the shape of his face, not in his voice, not in the way he walked or laughed. My mother mentioned it once, offhand, not maliciously. We were sitting on the back porch, watching Liam play in the yard. He was chasing bubbles, giggling like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. "He doesn't look much like you, huh?" she said with a chuckle. "Takes after Morgan's side, I guess." I smiled, nodded, and changed the subject. But I remembered it. I remembered the way her tone shifted as soon as the words left her mouth. I remembered the awkward silence afterward. Back then, I dismissed it. A lot of kids don't resemble their fathers. Genetics are weird. I'd seen charts. I told myself it didn't matter. Because he was mine. But now, with the truth about Morgan unraveling in front of me, that buried thought came roaring back. I started seeing everything differently. The way Morgan reacted when I joked about Liam being too smart to come from me. The way she used to get oddly tense during doctor's visits when nurses asked about family history. The way she once snapped at me just out of nowhere when I commented that Liam had Drew's exact shade of hair. That should have been the moment I knew. But knowing and proving are two different things. I ordered the DNA test quietly, online. One of those discreet kits. Swab seal, mail? Results in a few days. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed facts, not just suspicion, not another wave of emotional speculation I couldn't afford to drown in. I swabbed Liam's cheek while he was watching cartoons, oblivious. Just told him it was for a fun science game. He giggled, opened wide, and went right back to his show. I nearly broke down right then, just looking at him, this little boy who thought the world was good and simple and full of answers. A week later, the results came in. I opened the email with trembling hands. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it over the hum of the refrigerator. I had to read the line 3 times before it really landed. Probability of paternity, 0%. You are not the biological father. I don't know how long I stood there. The words on the screen blurred. My legs felt unsteady. I didn't cry. Not like before. I just went cold. Like the grief had gone so deep it had frozen over. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was identity theft. This was 3 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, lullabies, diapers, doctor visits, tears wiped away, mine. All of them mine. And none of them meant what I thought they did. He was still my son. But not by blood. And not by choice, not anymore. Morgan had taken even that from me. I didn't know what to do with the results at first. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to yell. I wanted her to see it. To look me in the eye and explain how she lived with the secret. How she kissed me goodnight knowing the truth. How she let me fall in love with a child that wasn't mine, knowing full well what she'd done. But when she came back from her trip Orlando, or wherever she really was, she acted like everything was fine. Like we were just in a weird spot. Like all of this could be fixed with a dinner reservation and a babysitter. I didn't say anything. I waited. Then I planned the dinner. At our house? Sunday night. I invited her parents, just like she used to when she wanted to feel like a real family. I told them it was a catch-up dinner, nothing formal. Morgan smiled when I mentioned it. Said it was sweet of me to organize something. Said she missed seeing her folks. She didn't suspect a thing. That night, I cooked her favorite salmon with lemon herb butter. Mashed potatoes. Steamed broccoli. Real tablecloth. Candles. The whole show. I set the table neatly just like she used to ask me to. I even laid out matching napkins. But in the center of the table, just beside her plate, I placed a sealed folder. Inside was a single printed sheet. The DNA results. Highlighted. The meal started off normal. Light chatter. Her dad complimented the salmon. Her mom talked about her book club. Morgan smiled, laughed, poured wine. She looked happy. Relaxed. Like the house wasn't crumbling around her. I didn't speak much. I just waited. And when dessert came, store-bought tiramisu, I finally cleared my throat. There's something I need to share, I said, placing my fork down. Morgan looked at me confused. I gestured to the folder. Could you open that, please? She hesitated. Reached for it. Opened it slowly. It only took her a second to understand what she was looking at. Her hands froze. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to panic. She looked up at me. Jake? Her voice cracked. Her parents both leaned in, reading the paper over her shoulder. Her mom gasped. Her dad swore under his breath. No one moved. No one touched their plates after that. Morgan opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She stared at me, eyes wide, lip trembling, searching for the right lie. But this time, there wasn't one big enough to climb out of the hole she dug. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I just sat back in my chair, letting the weight of the truth settle over the room. Her mom stood up first. Quietly. Took her purse and walked out. Her father followed soon after. Didn't even look at Morgan as he passed. Then it was just the two of us. She reached across the table, voice breaking. I didn't know for sure. I swear, Jake. I didn't know until after he was born. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. I looked at her, really looked at her. How long did you think you could keep this hidden? I thought maybe it didn't matter, she whispered. You love him. You're his dad in every way that counts. But not the one that's written in blood, I said quietly. She broke down then. Tears, gasps, the kind of sobs that rack a person's entire body. But they didn't move me. Not anymore. I got up, walked around the table, and gently removed the plate in front of her. We're done here, I said. She didn't argue. She just cried. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, the same ceiling we painted together 5 years ago, laughing when we spilled paint and kissed in the middle of the room. That ceiling felt like a lie now too. The next morning I packed a bag. Quietly. Without fanfare. She tried to stop me. Said we could go to therapy. Said we could figure it out. But she couldn't even say who Liam's real father was. Or maybe she could and just didn't want to. I told her I needed space. That I was going to stay with a friend. She asked if I was taking Liam. I looked at her like she had asked me if I wanted to bring home someone else's child. No, I said. He's not mine. Remember? Her face crumpled like paper. I walked out. Not with rage. Not with regret. Just with the truth. And the truth was finally enough. The morning I left, there was no yelling. No tears. No slammed doors or broken plates. I had imagined those things, sure. For weeks, maybe even longer, I'd pictured the moment I finally confronted Morgan. In those daydreams, she always screamed or begged or collapsed in some grand performance. But when the time came, none of that happened. Instead, I moved like a shadow through the house we built together, our home, or what was left of it. My steps were quiet, almost reverent, like I was sneaking through a museum filled with the ghosts of my own life. The photos still hung on the walls, us in Asheville, us at Liam's first birthday party, us on the pier the day I proposed. All of it looked like evidence now. Carefully staged exhibits of a life that had already unraveled. I'd spent the past 2 nights sleeping on the couch. Not because I couldn't bear to sleep beside her, because she hadn't even asked me to. We existed like strangers, circling each other in the same rooms, the silence between us deeper than any argument. She didn't try to explain the DNA test. She didn't try to argue anymore. It was like a dam had broken and now there was nothing left to hold back. That morning, I showered, shaved, and got dressed in the clothes I'd already packed. The suitcase was by the door. Everything else I owned could stay. I didn't need much. Not anymore. Just the essentials. Just the pieces of myself that hadn't been touched by her lies. I'd already found a rental. Small place. Unfurnished. 1 bedroom. But it was mine. And it didn't have history soaked into the walls. The night before, I transferred what was left in our joint account into a private one. I had a legal right to have. I didn't take more than that. Just my share. Just enough to start over. The divorce papers were already drafted. All that was left was the signature and the filing. I had a lawyer, a quiet, sharp woman named Renee who spoke with the calm authority of someone who'd walked plenty of people through the ruins of marriages. She didn't make small talk. She just handed me a packet, highlighted the key points, and told me she'd take care of the rest. Morgan was still asleep when I zipped my suitcase closed. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just staring out the window. The backyard looked the same as it always had. Same patch of overgrown grass I always meant to trim. Same weather-worn swing set I put together for Liam's 2nd birthday. I'd spend hours out there, pushing him, chasing him, teaching him how to kick a soccer ball. All those moments, real as they were, now existed in a strange purgatory. I'd meant them. Every laugh, every hug. But they were built on a foundation I didn't know was fake. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that he wasn't mine or that I still loved him anyway. That's something no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't come with an off switch. It doesn't cleanly sever emotion from memory. I still saw Liam's face when I closed my eyes. Still heard his laugh in the quiet. Still remembered the way he used to run down the hallway shouting, "Daddy," like I was the whole world. But I wasn't his father. Not by blood. And not anymore by choice. Morgan must have heard me open the front door because I heard her footsteps on the stairs. She stopped in the hallway, gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked tired, pale, smaller than I remembered. "You're really doing this," she said. It wasn't a question, just a simple observation. I nodded. She didn't cry, didn't scream, just stood there, watching me like I was something she had already lost, long before that morning. "I didn't want it to end like this," she whispered. "It ended a long time ago," I said. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I looked at her one last time, memorizing her face. Not the version I married, not the version I thought I knew. The one who had stood in our living room and kissed me on the cheek while another man's suitcase waited in the car. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I walked out before she could find the words. I didn't look back. The sun was just starting to rise as I drove away. Orange light spilled across the streets like a promise I hadn't heard in years. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel free. I felt hollow, like a book with all the pages torn out. But there was also relief. A quiet one. The kind that sits deep in your chest and hums instead of shouts. I didn't leave to punish her. I left because staying would have meant sacrificing what was left of me. She texted me later that afternoon. The first message was short. "We need to talk. Please." I didn't respond. An hour later, "Jake, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but we have to figure this out. Liam, he needs you. I need you." Still, I said nothing. And then, "You're really going to abandon him? After everything?" That one stung. She didn't get it. Or maybe she did, and that was her last card to play. I turned off notifications. Deleted the thread. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much to keep bleeding into a conversation that only existed to make her feel better. She called twice that night. I didn't answer. No voicemail. Just missed calls with her name lighting up my screen like a ghost. The next morning, I changed my number. No goodbye. No explanation. Just quiet. And maybe, in a strange way, that was justice. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't out to destroy her or make her hurt the way I had. That wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted peace. So I built it brick by brick. I bought a second-hand couch, a folding table, and a mattress. Cooked simple meals. Opened the windows. Let sunlight into a space that didn't smell like guilt. It was lonely, but it was honest. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I didn't check her social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates. I didn't drive by the house. I didn't need to. That part of my life was over. She tried again weeks later. A letter this time, handwritten in a shaky script that barely resembled the woman I used to know. In it, she said everything you'd expect. That she was sorry. That she never meant to hurt me. That Liam still asked for me. That she was seeing a therapist. That she hoped we could talk someday. I read it once. Folded it carefully. Placed it in a drawer. Never read it again. Some silences don't need to be filled. Some goodbyes don't need echoes. And some closures come not from confrontation, but from the simple act of walking away with your dignity intact. I'd already said everything I needed to say, without saying a word.